You've been following the Commons exchanges on the war. You might have heard the Liberal Democrat leader, Sir Ed Davey, raise something that others have wondered about. Why is it that British taxpayers are paying to protect tax exiles in Dubai and elsewhere in the Middle East? Sir Ed joins me now. Ed, I suppose the answer is because they're British.
Yes, we should protect them. I was really clear in the House that we absolutely owe a duty to them. They are British. But I think it's also a duty for the rest of our country that they pay their taxes. And I think many people have been rather alarmed, you've mentioned it yourself, that we are now going to pay for them to be protected, rightly, but they should start paying. I think it's a complete principle that we should all agree with. If they benefit from that protection, they should contribute towards it.
So they're contributing really towards the defence side of public spending. Does this mean some kind of exit tax for people proposing to leave the UK?
There's many ways one could do it. If you look at the way America does it, there's no exit tax. It's how they are taxed on their income. And so we could learn from the American system and get all the details right. But the principle that they should pay if they're benefiting from British armed forces, brave British soldiers and airmen, it surely should be a consensus point.
Well, no, there's a consensus in tomorrow's
maybe
newspapers.
Not with Richard Tice.
Maybe not there. Let me ask you about the more general point we've been talking about tonight, which is, I don't know really silly about this, but the Prime Minister has a real dilemma. On the one hand, he believes in international law and doesn't believe that international law allows this attack. But he also knows that Iran is a pretty dangerous place and he doesn't want to get too far away from Donald Trump. How do you think he's played it?
I think relatively well. Let me come to my criticism of it in a minute. But I actually agree with Fred Fleitz when he was talking about the Iranian regime. And when the Prime Minister's talked about the Iranian regime, it's a despicable regime. We shed no tears for the death of the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. What he and the IRGC have done across the world with their terrorism, their support for Hamas, for example, on the appalling atrocities on October the 7th, they deserve to be ousted. However, the point you make about international law, it's absolutely critical that that is upheld. There were negotiations. The point you're making to Fred Fleitz, there was no urgency for an attack. And he made the point about the missile production. I have to say, I don't really buy that totally. There should have been those negotiations. They were ongoing. And let's remember, President Trump was the one who got rid of the Obama agreement, which most people who had been involved with that, who'd seen what the investigators who'd gone into Iran to look whether they were abiding by the treaty said they were, that was got rid of by Trump and made us a less safe world.
He said it was a terrible agreement because it was going to allow the Iranians to move fast towards a nuclear bomb of their own, which with their missiles would have made them untouchable.
But he was wrong on that, not for the first time. Obama and many other people, and let's remember Britain, France and Germany were signatories to that whole process, said it was the best way forward. It was a peaceful way forward. Now, of course, there are many Iranians now who are celebrating the death of the Supreme Leader and hope that change will happen. But your point to Fred Fleitz is what will actually happen. There's a danger of civil war in Iran, of huge numbers of people killing, of the highly enriched uranium, the Iranian uranium, falling into the wrong hands. And that's before you look at the regional instability that's been caused. Our allies and partners, who the Prime Minister quite rightly wanting to defend them, they are in terror at the moment. So what has been unleashed by this illegal action is quite frightening, and where it goes, nobody knows. As Fred Fleitz had to agree, there is no plan. That is unacceptable from the President of the United States. There was no plan after the Iraq invasion, and look what happened there. No plan now. They're not learning from history.
So you think a civil war, an absolute sort of implosion in that part of the world is still possible?
Andrew, I don't know. I was listening to Simon MacDonald, and you were the former Permanent Secretary to the FCO. He was more hopeful. Maybe there is a moderate leader, a more Western-focused leader who will come and take over. But with all the vested interest in Iran and the complexities, the different ethnic groups that you referred to, I think this is highly reckless and highly risky.
It may be that we are on a sort of slippery slope where we end up effectively with the Americans and the Israelis. If there was a vote in the House of Commons to use our bases for offensive operations against Iran, how would the Liberal Democrats vote?
Almost certainly against. The only caveat I have is we would like to hear the government's argument, what legal advice they have. But I'm afraid the idea that it's good for our country to be dragged in to another war in the Middle East. We saw what happened last time. The Liberal Democrats opposed that Iraq war. We didn't accept the government's argument then. I very much doubt we'll accept the government's argument if they were to try to make it.
Many people listening will be hostile to any British involvement in any kind in the war that's going on. One man who I think represents that view is Jeremy Corbyn, recently confirmed as the leader of your party. He may not want the UK to be involved in the conflict, but did he agree the Iranian regime was evil and had to fall?
I think it's got awful human rights record, an awful record in the treatment of its people, and I hope there is obviously a peaceful future for the Iranian people. What I'm not convinced of is that you're going to bomb any change out of it. That's my difference.
Because it could be argued, perhaps weirdly, that assassinating the leader, the supreme leader in this case, is a more moral thing to do than actually to invade a country with boots on the ground.
Well, it doesn't seem to have had the effect that they thought it was going to have. And I'm not sure that the Trump regime fully understands the structure of the politics of Iran. It is not simple. In a sense, the Ayatollah is obviously known as the supreme leader, but there's also several parallel political structures, including the president. And it is this sort of complicated mosaic of power structures that I'm not sure people outside Iran fully understand.
So to be absolutely clear, you think this kind of attack will not produce democracy in Iran?
I don't think it'll have the effect they think it will at all. I think it will have two. One will be some people, and that's been shown already, were probably quite happy that the assassination had taken place. But then I saw pictures on Al Jazeera and others of thousands of people turning out in memorial of him. But I also think that a lot of people will just be appalled. Their country is under bombardment. School children are being killed. Civilian structures being taken out, and large numbers of people are going to lose jobs and homes and so on. And they don't want that. And so my urging to the Prime Minister just now in Parliament was that there must be a role now for somebody to step in. The UN don't seem willing to do it, to at least try and call a halt to this and get them back into the talks. Last Friday in Geneva, we were informed by both sides, both Iran and the USA, that the deal was within reach.
Do you have any ideas as to who this intermediator might be?
Obviously, the UN should be the number one call of it. Whether both sides would accept the UN, I don't know. They should. If not, it would have been Qatar or Oman. But since they're now
attacked themselves,
now being bombed themselves, I would have thought it's a bit unlikely.
You have been, I think it's fair to say, from time to time, a critic of the Prime Minister. He is now under huge pressure from the right of politics and from the United States for saying that Britain will not, for the time being, be part of the attack on Iran, and that international law is absolutely sacrosanct. To that extent, are you pleased with what he's doing?
Well, I listened very carefully to his statement and for the last hour and a half of the questions put to him. And the more he was questioned, the more the story seemed to unravel. He started off by saying that he was wishing to abide by international law, good, and that Britain would not be involved in the attacks on Iran, but then went on to say that in the event of there being a defensive retaliatory attack on Iran, British bases could be used, including ones in the UK, as well as potentially, as I see it, the RAF base in Akrotiri.
So it's a slippery slope in your view?
I'm quite unclear what the position actually is. It seems to me that within a few days, should this war go on, then we will actually be as involved as anybody else. The Spanish government, however, have been much clearer on this. They just said absolutely no way. And the US then withdrew its fighter planes from Spain and moved them to Germany.
Do you think this is a moment when, in a sense, we have to break with the United States? Because we were not consulted in any way, as far as I can tell. It's not like the Iraq War, where we were engaged in the whole process running up to it, and then it was boots on the ground. It's very different.
Yeah, both the Gulf War and the Iraq War Britain was very heavily consulted and very involved all along. I mean, I totally oppose both, but that's not the point. The point is there was a consultation. And it looks as though what happened was the talks were proceeding in Geneva on Friday, coming back this week, and then 12 hours later, Trump just announces this bombardment's going to take place. And Britain wasn't even consulted. The Prime Minister was then called at, 4 o'clock in the morning or something and told, are you with us or not? And he said he would abide by international law. So it seems to me that we need a much stronger statement from the British government saying we're not involved. We haven't had that.
In your sort of darkest worry, what do you think happens next?
Darkest worries are that the bombardment of Iran gets worse. There is a bombardment of the nuclear reactor in Iran. There is a nuclear reactor. It doesn't mean they've got nuclear weapons, but there is a nuclear reactor. And that Iran bombs the ammonia reactor in Israel. So you end up with potentially nuclear explosion and nuclear fallout, which would affect millions of people across the region. I think the sense of anger about this war is going to be huge. And the people that are primarily going to be blamed for this are actually the US for not being capable of seeing through negotiations that could have brought about, yes, a agreement on nuclear weapons, but maybe could have brought about, ultimately helped to bring about some changes in Iran.